So as I keep saying in like all of these videos, I've been doing a ton of NBA history research lately, and in doing so, that has involved watching a lot of games from the 80s and early 90s, even a little bit of games from the 1960s. And because of that, the concept of the evolution of the game of basketball, how we play basketball has changed over time, that has weighed very heavy on my mind. It's something I've been thinking about quite substantially because of how much the three-point shot has just completely changed everything. Hello everybody, welcome to Awesome Rusty Bug. Subscribe to the channel if you have not already and drop a like on this video. It only takes 1 second and makes a massive difference in how the video performs in the YouTube algorithm.
Be sure to also come through and catch the shoot around live every Thursday at around 3:30 Central Time on the Also Rusty Buckets channel. Today we're going to be ranking every power forward in the NBA more or less in a tier list. So if you want to help contribute to the tier list making of every power forward in the NBA, whether it be Jeremy Grant or LeBron James, then come through after this video is live, or you can just listen to it on your favorite podcast app.
Because I don't know about you, but as someone who started watching basketball as the three-point evolution was on the cusp of happening, I started watching basketball every single day when I was about 13-ish. I had watched a little bit every once in a while, like maybe one game a month or so from like 11. That was in 2013. Soon, the Warriors broke onto the scene, literally within 2 years, and that kind of changed everything. There were teams taking like 22 threes a game at that point, which at this point where we're at in basketball, that feels like the caveman era almost, because like what is it now, the average three-point attempts? It's insane. But Steph and the Warriors happened, changed everything. But when I go back and watch games from before that time, because I was weaned into it pretty early, I didn't really get set in my ways about what basketball was supposed to be. I was very open to it. It was still a game where teams are taking 23s a game, so threes going up is not a foreign concept. Going back and watching, I appreciated what the game is without the three-point shot, and I do, specifically because of just how much it makes the game an absolute like physical slaughter. Because everybody is on top of each other, there are just people hitting each other constantly. Like, people talk about the physicality of that era because of what the rules were and what defenses would do, as well as the culture around the league. And that's entirely valid. All of that contributed to like the bad boy Pistons, for example. But at the same time, it was also the fact that everyone's on top of each other. Like, there is just more opportunity for physicality when there is less space to operate. If you take 10 human beings and instead of them being spread out this far, they're this close, that means people are going to hit each other more. That's just the nature of it, and that has nothing to do with the rule changes and everything to do with the fact that coaches at the time just did not realize how damn valuable three-point shots can be. So I watch these old games. While I'm appreciating the basketball that's happening, I'm also thinking these guys are just so watching cavemen make it's obviously the game had its complexities, but it seems a lot grittier and simplistic and dumb, but not even dumb in the sense that, like, because I know a bunch of old heads would look at this and just go, dumb because they're not chucking three-pointers? No, dumb because they didn't realize how valuable they were, how much that makes everything easier. Because the thing that people don't give three-point shooting and just spacing enough credit for is the spacing aspect of it. Three-pointers make offense happen more at a higher rate because yes, they're taking shots that are worth more points, but also because of the effectiveness of that shot, it means defenses are stretched out and there is more operating space. That makes offense inside the arc fundamentally different. It's not like offense is the same inside the arc and now we also shoot threes. Because we shoot threes, what happens inside the three-point line is entirely different. That's why I strongly believe players like Michael Jordan would average like 40 points today because he was out there getting 37 points per game while having zero space to operate with, by contrast to a modern setting. So that was a long ramble, but I say all of that because the concept of next. Every couple of years, there's something that changes. It started off dominance from big men. Ironically enough, George Mikan being a big man and being very effective. The very, very early, I guess, basketball scholars thought that people who were tall were not supposed to play the game. That's the first convention that had to be broken. Was like, I can't imagine it was that difficult for him, but it was like, holy shit, if you're 6'10", it's a lot harder to stop you from making a layup. Then there was the Bill Russell Wilt era, just dominance from big men. Kareem came into play, and that was the case. And then the 1980s happened, and Larry Bird and Magic Johnson, Showtime Lakers, they sped up the game and diversified it a little bit more. The 6'9" playmakers rather than big men, the 6'9" perimeter creators rather than big men. And then from there, at that point in history, never really was a guard like the best player on a championship team, or if it was like a team like the Bad Boy Pistons where, yeah, Isaiah Thomas might have been the best player, but like it was close to being a tie with like 3 other dudes, and like the defense carried them significantly, like that kind of outlier situation. A high volume scoring guard had never led a team to a championship, at least not reliably. I guess I can think like Rick Barry maybe, but even he was like a forward. It was definitely not something that happened often, and it was not easy, and many people thought Michael Jordan could not do it, and then he did it. Because of that, that spurred going from big men, even though there was also a golden age of bigs coincidentally along with that, so we still did value big man. The guards and perimeter creation became such a significant aspect of the game, and then through some rule changes in the early 2000s, the game became dominated by perimeter players, and that was the way that it was up until 2023 when Nikola Jokic hoists a championship as the center, as the lead option, as a center of a championship team. That is where I think the next evolution is. That's what I've been thinking about lately, is that I think Nikola Jokic, a lot of people have talked about him like he's gonna be some anomaly, and there's probably a degree of truth to that, but that doesn't mean there are not going to be players that emulate his play style, and that does not mean that teams are not going to value that play style. There's this guy coming into the 2024 draft that I am obsessed with. It's like the first time I've become like a really huge fan of a prospect in a very long time. The guy I'm referring to is called Ade Maya. I believe he is from Spain, if I'm not mistaken. I think he just got a scholarship at UCLA. He is a 7'3" big man who gets comparisons to Pau Gasol. And if you look at any scouting report, if you watch any video on him, the first thing that's going to stand out to you, the first thing that they're going to talk about is his playmaking ability. The guy is just diming people up out of the post at 7'3". And he has a decent amount of skill offensively outside of that, ability to create in the post, showing signs as the shooter potentially. So as a result, the guy is not the next Jokic. I don't believe that the next Jokic is going to happen just casually. That's going to be a real outlier scenario if it ever did happen. Playmaking is something that has changed the tides as well. Going from true point guards, and that is a concept, to something like Stephen Curry, where it's kind of silly to think that you should just have your playmaking entirely predicated on one individual. It is far better for your team's success and far more transcendent in the long run to have a lot of players who can make plays. To have your best scorer also be your best playmaker is ideal, rather than divvying up playmaking and scoring separately as though they do not have a symbiotic relationship. I think the next evolution is big men being expected to be playmakers, and big men and their playmaking becoming heavily utilized in NBA offense far more than ever before. We've already seen Sabonis and Bam Adebayo, for example, be guys who are doing that. Alfred Şengün over with the Houston Rockets. I think soon, Ade Maya coming into the league. A couple of drafts from now, it might be just generally around the league, if your center is not getting like at least 4 assists per game, or at least capable of being that type of guy, your offense is may be lacking because everybody else has that going for them, and it's a really huge advantage. That is my prediction. I think that big men playmaking and really just a more universal approach to playmaking in general. Less so having the playmaking be dominated so much by an individual and more so a bunch of teams making plays together. With that said, this wasn't a promo for my Spurs series, but I do want to say Ade Maya is the player that I am going to end up drafting in that series. I guess that's a spoiler alert if the episode didn't come out. At that series, I'm trying to take this some of these ideas of the evolution of the game, kind of put